I've spent my whole career in team sports, and I definitely believe no matter how talented you think you are, no matter how successful you think you've been, it always takes a team of people to make you better. And if you're successful at building relationships, then as you get old, like I am now, you can call on these relationships you develop, and you can marry a lot of the things that you're doing in business together to truly make a synergy. And that's where I spend the majority of my time. I'm involved in about 15 different businesses, and I try to interconnect them because I think there are a lot of overlaps. That's what I really enjoy the most. I worked my whole life representing athletes from team sports, and they were the best in the world at what they do, but they weren't boxers, they weren't tennis players, they weren't golfers, they didn't play for themselves. And the greatest ones had to learn how to mold their talents, their incredible talents, and work with people who weren't as good as they were at what they did, but that they needed on the team in order to win.
You are really sort of like the unspoken, unsung hero of futurism. You kind of get a sense of where the future is heading because you have a way of looking at the present in a certain way. And so when you look at right now, how much of how the world has been wrestling with the pandemic, during that time, you realize that mankind's really got a crisis of confidence in healthcare, in the way in which governments are thinking about how people will gracefully grow older, where that will happen, and the kind of services that they'll actually have access to. Did you sense this given the way you entered into that asset class, the adult active care facility world? When did that occur to you?
Well, it was a two-step process, I would say. So step one, when I teach, I have my own college, you mentioned, I like to teach. And one of the things I teach my students, because, to teach, whether you're teaching someone golf or you're teaching economics or you're teaching marketing, I think you have to address it in a way that people will remember what you're trying to teach them. It's not enough just to say it. One of my favorite people in the world died last year named John Thompson, who was the basketball coach at Georgetown. He was a brilliant man, and he had like a PhD in human nature. He really understood people. And he would say to me from time to time, because I'm a very impatient listener, I like to interrupt. And he said, David, let me explain something to you. Hearing is physical, but listening is psychological. You have to want to listen. So I was involved in a real estate company. I started about 2014 with a person that hadn't been in real estate before, but was a friend, and I lost a lot of money. Now, you can have one of two reactions when you get in a situation like, say, okay, forget real estate, not for me, I'm not comfortable. Or you could be stubborn and competitive like I am, both, and say, God, I'm not going to walk away as a loser. I really believe that there's a way to do this, but I didn't do it the right way. I didn't pick the right horse, didn't pick a person who was an expert, who had experience, or had a good vision. So I met Joel Anderson, who had 30 years experience, was on the governor's commission, the chairman of the board, governor's commission on senior living in Florida. And I said to him, look, I really believe in the space. I think the aging, as I mentioned, the aging of the population, but you are an expert in operations. You understand the needs right down to the bricks and mortar. And so we got together. So it was a little bit out of stubbornness. At the time we got together, it was just around the onset of the pandemic. So I don't want to mislead anyone and say I had this amazing look into the future. I knew the pandemic was going to come. Just like Trump had no vision knowing the pandemic was going to end. He thought it was going to end in, April of 2000. And he was only 1 million people, deaths off, but he was close. It was fortuitous. And I think in business, you have to have a great plan, and you have to be facile enough to be able to pivot as you see forces around you changing. That's what makes great entrepreneurs. You're not going to be successful every time out of the box, and you have to learn from your mistakes. So I like to say when I teach that I come from the Clint Eastwood School of Business. And my students say, Mr. Falk, what on earth does that mean? I said, it means, and I can't do a great imitation, a man's got to know his limitations. You got to know what you're good at, what you're not good at. What you're not good at, you have to find really smart people and around you. Obviously, you have an amazing network of people in the financial world. I wanted to access that not only for our real estate business, but for other businesses I'm in, as you know. And because like you, I do believe in partnership. I worked my whole life representing athletes from team sports, and they were the best in the world at what they do, but they weren't boxers, they weren't tennis players, they weren't golfers. They didn't play for themselves. And the greatest ones had to learn how to mold their talents, their incredible talents, and work with people who weren't as good as they were at what they did, but that they needed on the team in order to win. And I think great quarterbacks, great generals know how to harness the power of everyone on the team to make it synergistic, to make the sum of the parts, great, make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. I'm in 2 SPACs actually right now, 2 special purpose acquisition companies. And I was asked to be the chairman of the first one, offered a lot of money. I was very intrigued, but I have my own reasons I didn't want to be the chairman. So I said to the founder, I said, I'm going to recommend a guy to be our chairman, Harvey Schiller. He's an older gentleman. He's 82 years old, started his business career at age 46 as a retired brigadier general in the Air Force. And he has the best resume of anyone I've ever met in my life. He was the commissioner of the Southeast Conference of Football, which is the #1 college conference. For those of you who watch the national championship Monday night, Alabama, Georgia, both in the SEC. He then went and became the head of the U.S. Olympic Committee prior to the Dream Team in '92. Then he became the president of Turner Broadcasting. Then he founded the Yankees Nets Network. Then he did the America's Cup. He ran a sports agency in Canada called Asante. He's on the Hall of Fame committee in baseball. The guy's just he's a great guy. And what I learned in the course of the SPAC over the last year and a half, we have a lot of very, very talented people who have been very successful and all have big egos. And you need one person to be the damn general to control the group. And so we're doing the money raise for the SPAC. We're trying to raise $250 million. And Harvey and myself and a third gentleman named John Miller, who was the chairman of AOL before they sold to Time Warner, another old friend of mine from the NBA, we raised $1.3 billion in 5 days. And in order to manage the calls, Harvey said, okay, we're going to be on these just like this. We're on a Zoom with, one every hour for like 10 hours a day. We have to have some stability in these discussions. So don't answer a question if I don't call on you. So we all said, great. So we're on a call. Guy asked me a question. Harvey said, "Go, David, answer the question." So I answered. He had a follow-up question. And I started to answer the follow-up. And Harvey interrupts me and said, "Excuse me, did I call on you?" No, sir. Now, so you need a general who can harness the talents, the disparate talents of the group and make it work. And so I've spent my whole career in team sports. And I definitely believe no matter how talented you think you are, no matter how successful you think you've been, it always takes a team of people to make you better. I thought that Nike was the most hungry for Michael. They would spend the most money promoting him. Converse had the old mentality. You have to establish yourself first. So in year 1, Michael and Nike outsold every American shoe company by a mile. They sold $126 million worth of shoes, and they projected to sell 3. So I was thrilled. I thought it was the right connection. Now, I would say to your investors and your colleagues, one of the things I had to learn when I was very young and impetuous is that it's always better to turn down a good deal than to make a bad deal.
Tell us, What would your spin be on that? When you take Michael Jordan and you take a shoe company like Nike, what is it that you saw that very few, if anyone else, saw? What is it that you saw in that moment?
So I'm going to backtrack about 1 minute and then I'll respond. So when I started the business, I was 23 years old, and I went to work for a law firm that represented most of the major American tennis players: Arthur Ashe, Stan Smith, Marty Riessen, Gorman, and later on came to represent Jimmy Connors, Lendl, most of the major. And I didn't know anything about tennis. I really wasn't a tennis guy, but I got into it. And, as I said earlier, you have to learn what you don't know. And I learned that each business, if you will, each of these players was a business, not a not very small business. I wouldn't call it a brand, but they had a certain something that they represented to the public. If you think about this, I'm playing golf on Monday with one of your favorites, Wayne Gretzky, at Michael's club. I love Wayne Gretzky, the great one. I think I mentioned, I love Wayne. He's one of the most humble people that I know, for a person who's accomplished so much. And he definitely has a certain image that you'd put with certain products. So when Michael was a rookie, it was before the age of marketing. No one in basketball had ever been marketed at all. Larry Bird, Dr. J, Magic Johnson, nobody. Magic had one national deal his first 5 years in the league. And I went to people because I was sort of bored, if I could use that. I was thrilled to be doing what I was doing. But the prevailing wisdom at the time, when you're representing athletes, you say, okay, you have Michael, in 5 years, if he's really great, you could do the kinds of things that Magic did. And I thought to myself, wow, if Michael wanted to do the kind of things Magic did, he should have hired Magic manager. Why is he hiring me in order to do things that Magic did? And so in the progression of my career, I went out to all the companies that I had established relationships with my first 10 years in business. When Michael came along, and I said, I believe that this man, it could be one of the most exciting players in years. I didn't say he could be the best. No one knew that. And I only want to have 10 affiliations his entire career. It's I'm going to build a country club. I'm going to build Augusta, but I'm only going to have 10 members. Now, you don't know how good Augusta's going to be, but I'm telling you it's going to be really special. And I'm inviting you to be one of the first 10 members. If you tell me, hey, David, what the hell do you know about golf? You don't know how to build a golf club. I ain't going to join. That's your prerogative. I won't be offended in the least. But when you find out that it's the best golf club in the world and you want to be member number 11, I'm going to say, excuse me, were you hearing or listening? I told you 10 members and that's it. And so we created what I call the philosophy of scarcity. We created a scarcity in the marketplace before he was anything. I hope I'm not being sexist by making this remark. Nike was like the girl you wanted to date, but she would never go out with. So the first 5 proposals I made with Nike, they turned me down. They were all for tennis players.
It's all right, David. It works all other ways too,
Okay. So I told the head of marketing, who became my best friend in the biz, Rob. I said, Rob, I'm going to offer you guy number 6. And if you turn me down, no problem. I will never call you again. Now, at this point, Nike was probably a $20 million company. Today, they're like $220 billion. So they were tiny. They weren't Adidas, which is the number 1 company in the world. We represented the owner of Adidas, Horst Dassler, whose father, Adi Dassler, had founded the company. They weren't Converse in America, which is the official shoe of the NBA and the official shoe of the Olympics. They were like an upstart. So when Michael came out, I felt that Nike needed him the most. Converse had Dr. J, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Adidas had Kareem, had all these star players. And I wanted the company to market Michael because I thought, without making any pun on the way he played, we needed someone to jumpstart his career off the court. And I thought that Nike needed him the most. And the most important thing we did in his first deal, we did 2 interesting things that no one's ever written about. One, I made him give stock in the company. The few shares they gave him today are worth $75 million, which is way more than his deal. And the second thing, which is far more important, we made them spend $1 million in the first 6 months marketing. Now, no other player had even a commercial. Magic didn't have a commercial for Converse. Bird didn't have a commercial. And so when they put him on TV, day one, it jump-started his career with all the corporations like Coke and McDonald's because he was visible and they got a chance to see his personality. And like many things in life that are schizophrenic, like me being a lawyer and an entrepreneur, which are opposites, Michael is one of the most unbelievable players in the history of sports. But off the court, he's a very regular, down-to-earth, totally genuine guy. And that duality, I thought, was something that needed to be projected. And Nike spent a lot of money projecting it. So you guys don't remember this, but they came out with the first shoe. It was all black and red. And the NBA banned it in 5 minutes. They said, you can't wear the shoe. It doesn't conform to the team color code. So Strasser, my friend, the head of marketing, called me up in a panic. He just signed this really big deal. And he said, God, we're screwed. The league banned the shoe. I said, God, that's the best news I've heard in years. And he goes, why? I said, because we're going to do a Banned in Boston commercial. And within 24 hours, they came out with a commercial that said, like, on October 15th, Nike came out with a revolutionary basketball shoe. And on October 17th, the league banned it. And then they had like the dragnet things with the chisel, and they covered the shoes with a little black thing. And they said, fortunately, the league can't stop you from buying them. Oh, God, the sales went through the roof. So I thought that Nike was the most hungry for Michael. They would spend the most money promoting him. Converse had the old mentality. You have to establish yourself first. So in year one, Michael and Nike outsold every American shoe company by a mile. They sold $126 million worth of shoes, and they projected to sell 3. So I was thrilled. I thought it was the right connection. Now, I would say to your investors and your colleagues, one of the things I had to learn when I was very young and impetuous is that it's always better to turn down a good deal than to make a bad deal.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Hunt. I'm the Chief Intelligence Officer with the Real Estate Wealth Lab, and I'm inviting you to this amazing, exclusive, yet free event on May 11th, 7:30 on Eastern Time and 4:30 on the West Coast, because we have a special guest from the company called Tenant Cube. Whether you're just starting your portfolio, or you're trying to scale your portfolio, or you're wanting to exit, but you need a way how, oh my gosh, this Tenant Cube software is property management. It's absolutely unbelievable. You have to check it out. Everything from having all of your paperwork in order, doing the right thing, having proper screening in place for your tenants, being able to collect your rent as well, all in one spot, and they even have maintenance. So you don't even have to have those expensive property managers anymore. This is very fascinating. So I will see you on May 11th. Take care, and I'll see you there.